Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Luca. I don't know who asked for this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. This is for the people who might be like me, in the sense that you keep seeing all of these books that are sort of popular in the book community. They're popular on BookTok, they're popular on BookTube, and you keep seeing them and they keep being recommended, but you just know that these books aren't really your genre. They're not kind of your thing. You're glad that other people are enjoying them, however, you're not gonna pick them up. And yet, these books keep popping up. People keep talking about them, and despite you knowing at your core that this book is not for you, there's interest. There's this internal conflict going on where you're sort of thinking, I know that these books aren't going to be good and I'm going to read them and they're going to turn out to be mediocre and I'll have wasted time, and yet I kind of want to read them despite having like thousands of books on my TBR that I actually want to get to, and I know that I'm going to really enjoy, and most of them I'm predicting are going to be 5 stars, and I'm really excited for them, but I keep sort of saving them because I feel like they're going to be 5 stars, and so I'm waiting for the right time to read them, but it's never really right time, so I keep pushing them back and not reading them, and they're just piling up and I'm never going to get around to them because it's never going to be the right time, because I feel like I need to read them at a time where I'm in a good mood for them so that I can fully appreciate them and have fun with them and enjoy them to the full extent, like just enjoy them as much as possible. So I keep not reading them, and instead of reading these books that I know that I'm going to enjoy and that I know are my thing, I keep reading books that end up being kind of mediocre, and then I end up having a mediocre year where I've just read a bunch of books that were meh. If that sounds like you, that's also me. And so instead of reading one of these books, I'm going to pick up one of these books that I keep seeing everywhere. I'm gonna give them a go. I'm gonna read them, and that way you don't have to. Or maybe I can tell you whether you should read them based on what I thought of them, or whether they're not worth the hype, and instead maybe you should go and read those books that you keep saving, because there's never going to be a good time, okay? Just read them. Just do it. I'll see you soon. Bye! The first books I read for this challenge were Legendborn and Bloodmarked by Tracy Dion. I'm kind of cheating a little bit because I read them before I planned on ever doing this video, but I can include them because I think they sort of blew up on TikTok. I know that they were very popular on TikTok, and I think it's even written on one of the covers like a TikTok sensation or something like that. I am a little bit late to Legendborn. I am fully aware of that. It came out in 2020. However, Bloodmarked came out in, I believe, the end of 2022 or beginning of 2023, so it's still recent, it's still relevant, and these are good books for this video, in my opinion. They were a big surprise for me because they're very much outside of my comfort zone. I wouldn't usually go for YA contemporary fantasy. I just sort of haven't read these kind of books since I was about 12. It was such a big surprise because I ended up binge reading the series. Only 2 books are out so far. I am going to focus more on Legendborn because I didn't enjoy Bloodmarked as much, and also I don't want to give too many spoilers for the series just in case you decide that you would also like to go and read these books. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Legendborn. Just know though that I didn't love the sequel, but that is quite an unpopular opinion, and most people that I've seen review the book say that they think it just gets better and they loved it. So I'm definitely in the minority here. Legendborn reinvents the tale of King Arthur whilst also intricately braiding topics such as race and self-discovery and grief. I think I can stop there. The story follows our main character, Brianna Matthews, aka Brie. We meet her 3 months after her mum has tragically passed away in this car accident, so of course she's still wrapped up in grief. And when we meet her, she is heading off to this sort of, it's a residential program at UNC for like gifted high schoolers. So she's younger than everyone else, but because she's quite intelligent or something, she's managed to get into this program, which means that she's going to this university and she's going alongside her best friend Alice. You get into the plot very, very quickly. Literally within the first few chapters, you first of all find out about her mum passing away, and then you pretty much immediately go to this university and it's like their first day. Literally their first day. Bree manages to convince her best friend Alice to go to this like student party thing, which I think is on campus, and they're not supposed to be going because there's like drinking. It's basically like a bunch of students getting together and drinking in the woods and jumping off of like cliffs into lakes and just, you know, doing student things, I guess. So she convinces her best friend to go there, and I can't stress this enough, it is her first day at this university, and while she's there, she sees this sort of paranormal bright being floating in the sky, and it appears to be feeding off of like the students, and she later finds out that this is a demon. She seems to be the only one who can see it until she takes a closer look, and then she realizes that there are a handful of other students who also appear to be able to see it. Bree then goes on to find out that there's this secret society of hunters that hunt down the demons, and they're called Legendborn. Legendborn are descendants of Arthur and his knights. When Bree finds all of this out, she hatches a plan to infiltrate this secret society so that she can sort of find out more about her mum and get some answers that she's desperate for. That is how you start the story. If you don't want to know any more, then I'm going to kind of stop there. I'm going to continue talking about the book, but I won't tell you too many details about it because if you're like me, you might prefer to go into it relatively blind and not knowing too much. Legendborn is this like fast-paced action story about a quest for revenge whilst also looking for answers in the midst of grief. Tracy Deonn's writing is exceptional. There are plenty of diverse characters. Bree herself is such an exceptional character because she's so interesting and complex, and she feels like such a breath of fresh air. I feel like she's a character that we haven't seen that much in YA, and I was also pleasantly surprised because, as I say, the writing was really, really good. And I don't mean to sound negative about YA. I haven't read all that much YA, but I think when you go into YA, you have this preconceived idea that it's going to have bad writing. Focus, hello. I know the tulips are pretty, but if you could concentrate. As I was saying, the author explores a lot of different topics, and one of them, for example, as I've already said, is grief, but she does such an exceptional portrayal. I know that she was inspired by her own feelings of grief because her own mum passed away. I've never seen such an incredible depiction of grief. I have a few quotes. Look at me. Whew. But grief isn't a competition. It's not an identical pain that we all meet one day when death finds us. It's a monster personalised by our love and memories to devour us just so. Grief is suffering, tailored. She also discusses racism, particularly in the South. There's a huge theme to do with colonialism because, actually that's a spoiler, I can't really say, but our main character is Black, and so she goes through this journey of self-discovery. There's a quote in the book where she says that enslavers never expected the descendants of the enslaved to be free enough to look back in time. I just thought it was an incredible retelling of this legend, and Deonn does this incredible job of blending this Arthurian society with the history of the past centuries, colonialism and slavery in such a fascinating way, and it just shows such an incredible depth of world building. I thought it was just really impressive that she managed to create such an action-packed, entertaining, fun book, but have it still be really poignant and discuss a lot of really important topics Bree's grief is incredibly sad and moving, but then you also have these moments where I was like laughing out loud. And I would say read this book if you like, I've written it down, okay, that's why I'm reading. If you like a school setting, if you like love triangles, if you like magic, trials, secret society, great side characters, magical competitions, banter, enemies to lovers, maybe, I don't know. There's like a training montage. One thing that did make me laugh was that they keep getting attacked by demons, obviously, but there's also all of these like hell animals. I swear to God, they have like hellhounds, hell foxes, hell... There was like hell owls or something, hell eagles. What was there also? There was, oh, hell boars, hell serpents. I mean, there could be freaking hell dolphins in it. I swear to God, the author was just like ticking a box for all the animals. There is also the chosen one trope in this, which I don't usually like, but I think it worked quite well in this. There is an element of sort of insta-love, which I really didn't like. It is kind of explained later on, and you can't convince me that it wasn't insta-love. I also, this is like a minor spoiler, but there is a kind of love triangle going on without there actually being a love triangle going on. If you read the book, you know what I mean. I know for a fact that everyone is on Selwyn's side. I can't believe for a second that anyone was rooting for Bree and Nick. I also think it's quite funny how our main character basically never goes to class. I think she goes to class like once in 360 pages. And I don't really understand how the humans don't notice that there are hellhounds running around, that there's like these students taking part in like these magical competitions and trials on school grounds, and like not a single student has noticed. There's even like this one random sort of emo kid running around with canine teeth, running around at like supernatural speed, blowing shit up, and they're just like, nobody's noticed. I know that they can mesmerize and stuff, but... So yeah, all in all, I thought it was a good book. I enjoyed it. I do not regret reading it. I am a little bit sad that I didn't enjoy the second one as much. That was Legendborn. I think I gave the first book maybe a 4 or 5 star rating. I can't remember. The second book, maybe a 3, maybe a 3.5. I'm not sure yet. First book down. The next book that I read was theatlassix by Olivia Blake. BookTok sort of has this chokehold on the book community at the moment, to the point where if you walk into like a bookstore or if you go into a library, there are whole sections dedicated just to BookTok recommendations at the moment. And I feel like theatlassix, along with a few others, was one of those books that was really at the forefront of this kind of change within the industry. And I just know for a fact that if you are a consumer of sort of any book related content, then you will most likely have heard about theatlassix, or you'll have seen it being recommended somewhere. That was the same for me, so I decided to pick it up. I know that the author is self-published, but because this book gained so much popularity, she then got an actual publisher to publish a newer version of her book, and the book cover was changed and it was slightly edited. So I'm aware of that, and I'm very happy for the author. That's great for her. Yeah, I'm not really sure why this book received so much hype. I just know that it was really pushed by BookTok. Theatlassix is about this secret society who take care of the Library of Alexandria. So in this world, the society deemed that the knowledge that was in the library would be dangerous in the wrong hands, so they intentionally burned it down in order to hide its existence from the rest of the world and to preserve the knowledge in secret. It somehow like magically changes location. So in this book, the library happens to be in London, but it's been in loads of other cities and countries. Wait. Oh, let me try again. I don't love my hair like this anyway. I'm a bit off topic. Oh, bloody hell. Got hair all over my jumper. Every 10 years, 6 contestants are sort of selected so that they can participate in these trials to themselves become librarians. And what we soon find out is that only 5 will actually make it through and 1 contestant will be eliminated. And I guess the big selling point for the contestants is that they will then gain so much access to so much knowledge, and knowledge that a lot of people don't have and can never possibly have without becoming a librarian. We get to see each character's POV, and throughout the book you get to know more about them. We very quickly find out that each character has been selected because they have this specific ability, and they each have, what's the word that I'm looking for? They sort of each have different qualities. They have different areas of expertise within magic. And so, for example, you have one of the characters who's an illusionist, you have a different character who can read minds, etc, etc. And so they've all been selected for their different abilities, and throughout the book, because you get all of their POVs, you get to learn a little bit more about their magic and how it works, and a bit more of their backstory. I went through this book I had it on my Kindle, but I also had the audiobook for it, and if it wasn't for the audiobook, I definitely don't think that I would have been able to finish this book. Where to start? There's a lot of different things to touch upon, and I don't know where to begin. I think perhaps one of the reasons for it being so popular is because of the aesthetic. It is sold as a sort of dark academia fantasy, and I do understand where they're coming from. However, a lot of the atmosphere and the vibes are completely within the dialogue. So to make myself a little bit more clear, what I mean by that is that essentially this whole book is just conversations between characters. Like, there's very little description, and I found that when I was reading the book, I was unable to visualize where these characters were, what the rooms looked like, what the school, library. Luca completely forgets everything. She's just not as good at creating an atmosphere within the descriptions. It's all within the dialogue. I felt that the plot was a little bit weak. I understand what the motivations for the characters are, but I felt that it was just a little too vague and weak, and it just wasn't convincing enough. I also think that the big issue with this book is that it is incredibly pretentious. There are a lot of conversations where characters are just having this philosophical musings and going on and saying all of these things that are supposed to appear really smart, but in reality nothing makes sense. I would be reading these words and I understood the words individually, but put together in a sentence it just made no sense. And I was describing it to Jack and saying that it felt like the sort of quotes that people used to put in their bios, or who they would put them like underneath their Facebook profile picture. You would put like this random quote and it was super dramatic, but it just didn't make any sense, and it just felt a little bit cringy, especially when you look back on it now. And it was a lot of that, one after the other. Incredibly pretentious without there actually being any substance. I think the author thought that these characters were a lot more badass than they actually are, and the same for the story. I think the author thought that the story was a lot more compelling than it actually is. I need my notes. There's not a lot of breathing room within this story because you're constantly switching POV, and so you're going from these nonsensical philosophical musings where they just ramble on for ages, asking questions to which they don't actually answer, which I guess is supposed to again make them sound smart, but it just doesn't work and it doesn't make sense, and what they're saying isn't actually clever because again it doesn't make sense, especially on Callum's POV, which was incredibly dialogue heavy. But it wasn't even a dialogue because there wasn't much of an exchange. It was more of a monologue where he's just saying a bunch of things to sound impressive. And the sole purpose of Tristan, with whom he's supposedly conversing, Tristan is essentially just there to have an odd reaction to kind of cut up what is essentially just a monologue. I need to change position because my feet hurt like this. Hang on. Just to continue with the same sort of train of thought, what I mean as well when I say that you don't get any breathing room is you don't get any downtime with these characters. You don't get to see them in a sort of slightly more relaxed scenario where you get to see them or the characters bouncing off of each other. The characters would constantly be saying all of these things that were supposed to be sort of meaningful and thought-provoking, but once again didn't make any sense. None of these characters, by the way, are likable. It becomes very, very clear that the author has favorites, and Parisa, for example, is just constantly shoved down your throat. Even if you're in a different POV, there will always be some way of bringing it back around to Parisa and talking about her, and it's just kind of annoying because there are some other characters that could have been interesting if they'd been developed much, but they just don't get that much screen time. When there are a lot of POVs, this often happens, I feel like, where you'll be reading one POV and kind of enjoying it, and then you'll switch to another one and you're just not as invested and you're not really that interested. So you're reading through it just looking forward to getting to the next POV, but what would happen was that I would get to the next POV and I still wouldn't enjoy their POV, and then gradually it was kind of the case for all of the POVs. I realized I didn't like any of them. There is nothing wrong with having unlikable characters. I think it's great. I'm all up for having unlikable characters. I don't think that you have to like a character to enjoy a book, but in this case they're just all unlikable and there are none that you're really that interested in, at least I find. The other point that I wanted to touch upon is that the magic system isn't very well explained, and I feel like certain things aren't made clear. For example, I don't think this is a spoiler, but one of the characters, Nico, I didn't realize until very, very late on that he could shapeshift. What? There's also not a lot that happens in this book because it's so much dialogue and there's this sort of power play between the characters where they're trying to betray each other, manipulate each other. I felt that the betrayal and the the sort of mind games and the betrayal and the manipulating, I don't know why I can't say that word, but we're going to move on, were very superficial in the sense that a character would be being manipulated, but he would know that he was being manipulated, and then you get the POV of the manipulator who would very clearly say, I'm manipulating him, and then the manipulated character would walk away and a different character would come up and be like, you know you're being manipulated, right? Why is manipulated? It was very surface level. It's extremely slow moving. It is definitely a slog. That's why I was saying that I don't think I would have been able to read it without the audiobook, because it is just a lot of talking. There's not much action going on, and there are all of these weird mind games, and once again all of these deep, meaningful quotes, and randomly just thrown in amongst all of that is this one character that has a best friend who is a secondary character, and he's this random mermaid / centaur that can walk around in people's dreams, and there's just this whole other side story kind of going on, and I'm sure that he's going to be important in the next books, but it was just a bit random in this one where everyone was trying to participate in these trials, which, by the way, there aren't any trials. If you go into this book expecting to have these games and whatever, there is none of that. But they're all trying to figure out why they're there and find more out about their powers and what's the point and what's going to happen at the end of this trial, etc, etc. And then you just have this other character, Nico, who's talking to his dream friend who is a mix between a mermaid and a centaur and has mummy issues, and that's just kind of thrown in there. That being said, though, I did really like Nico's relationship with both Gideon and Max. I found those moments very entertaining. Very early on in the book you sort of get to see their relationships, and I enjoyed that. I think that was everything I really wanted to say. I feel like the ending made this book or this book series salvageable. I don't think it was the most amazing ending, but I think it was done quite well, and this might be an unpopular opinion, but I feel like there was a lot of foreshadowing for it. I didn't find the ending particularly surprising, like when I'm trying to say this without giving any spoilers, but when you get to the ending, I don't feel like it came out of nowhere. I do feel like it was built up to, and there was foreshadowing. And will I be continuing the series? No, I don't think so. Would I say that this book merits the hype it has around it? No. Sorry. I'm probably going to rate it a 2 stars. It doesn't make sense to me that people are raving about it as much as they are. Also, there are so many people shipping all of these characters together, and that doesn't make sense to me either. That being said though, just because it's not for me doesn't mean it won't be for you. To sort of help you out so that you can decide whether or not you would like to give it a go, I would read this book if you enjoy secret societies, if you enjoy having a cast of multiple varied characters, if you enjoy conversation heavy books, if you're okay with slow moving books. I wouldn't read this book if you're going into it really looking forward to having loads of trials and sort of like battles and games and all the rest of it, because that's just not what really happens in this book. I also wouldn't recommend that you read this book if you're really excited about one of the huge selling points, which is that it's dark academia. If that's why you're picking up this book, I would say be wary, because I didn't get the dark academia aesthetic at all from this book, and I wouldn't pick it up if you don't like characters that are supposed to be badass, but they're not. I wouldn't say that it deserves the hype, but it still might be some people's cup of tea, and I feel like maybe the rest of the series will be worth reading. I won't be doing it myself. In all fairness though, I say that it's very slow, and I say that I didn't particularly love it, but I did go through it very, very quickly. I would 100% recommend trying the audiobook for this one if you're thinking of trying it. I think I went through this in 2-3 days. I went through it very, very quickly. There you go. That was what is this? Technically 3rd book that I've read for this challenge, if I'm counting both Legendborn and Bloodmarked. I will see you very soon for the next book. Good luck, future me. The 4th and final book that I read and I just finished was Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I was convinced that I was never going to read it. The reason being, number one, that I have already read a book by Leigh Bardugo. I read Six of Crows, and I personally didn't like it. It wasn't my cup of tea. And reason number 2 was that when people were describing this book, I found out that the 2 main characters were called Darlington and Galaxy. Now, maybe I'm being a bit of a book snob, but that was an ick for me. That was a red flag. Any book where the characters have those kind of names probably isn't going to be for me. And again, maybe I'm being a snob. However, I've moved past it and I have read the book and I've finished it literally just now. I just put down the book, sat down so that I could film this clip, and I thought this would be a perfect book to include because the sequel, Hellbent, just came out this year. What is it about? The book takes place at Yale, where we discover that there is something called the Houses of the Veil. So these are 8 different houses / 8 different secret societies that all coexist at Yale, and they all specialize in some kind of magic. Ninth House exists to essentially babysit all these other houses. Ninth House's job is to, whatever these secret societies are up to, make sure that they don't cause harm to outsiders, make sure that they're sort of contained, and essentially make sure that they don't do anything naughty and clean up any mess that is caused by these secret societies. And their main job is essentially to protect everyone involved, is to protect the members of the secret society, but also to protect, again, outsiders. Our two main characters, Darlington and Galaxy, which I could look past Galaxy because she's referred to as Alex within the book. She's never really called Galaxy, so I could kind of forget about it and forgive it. But anyway, our two main characters are both members of Ninth House. Their relationship is that of Darlington being a sort of tutor to his disciple, Alex, showing her the ropes. He's showing her how the house works. He's showing her her responsibilities, her duties, what her role is going to be within the house. Where do I go from here? When we get into the book, there are a few things that we know. We know for sure that something has happened to Darlington. He is not around. He has gone somewhere, or something has happened to him. We don't know what, but that is one of the mysteries. Another mystery that we have when starting the book is that we also know that Alex is very unusual, and she was found, I think, like a few months prior amongst a bunch of people who had been murdered. Essentially, she was the sole survivor to this catastrophic scene where quite a few people were murdered and it was brutal, and somehow she is the sole survivor. Alex was never meant to go to Yale. It is kind of not her world. She was never intended to join the secret society. She was never meant to join, I think it's called like Leith, the general term for all of these societies. I could be wrong, but it's called Leith. She was never supposed to join. The reason she was recruited was because she has a very special ability, and that is that she is able to see greys, aka ghosts. So that's the information that we have going into this. We then follow mainly Alex. We follow her as at the very beginning of this book, a body is discovered upon campus. It was a murder, and Alex is sent to investigate to see whether the secret societies are somehow involved. She is sent in lieu of Darlington because Darlington is absent. I found the first 100 pages really difficult to sort of get into because the first 100 pages are extremely confusing, because obviously you're discovering this whole new magic system and this whole new world and all these different new characters, and there's a lot of information that is being given to you. And I would say that, and I think this is quite a common critic that this book has gotten, and that is that the timeline to begin with is very, very confusing. I would even say it's kind of messy. Literally after like 100 pages in, I started to kind of get to grips with it and understand it a little bit better, but it is very difficult to get into to begin with. It is very confusing because you would be in what is supposed to be present day, but then you would have a flashback to, I don't know, for example, a scene between Alex and Darlington, and then instead of returning from that flashback once it had ended to what was supposed to be present day, you would skip ahead like 3 months, and it would be just literally from one line to the next. Once I'd pushed through those 100 pages, and I was complaining to Jack about it and saying, I really don't want to read this book, I'm not into it. Once I pushed through and like forced my way through, I ended up really, really enjoying it. There's a tractor going by. Another thing that I do want to say though, I was not warned. Obviously this is dark academia, but I was not warned how dark it was going to be. I know that a lot of people will already know the author, and I think that they will probably mostly associate her to YA. So this is definitely adult. There are dark themes going on, but I think what was very difficult for me to read, and I was not prepared for, was that there are a lot of, I don't know if I can say this without being flagged on YouTube, but there were a lot of scenes involving SA, and it was like on the page explicitly written down, and it was tough. I found those really difficult to read, so just be warned before going into it. Perhaps read the trigger warnings for this book. Something that I found out was that Leigh Bardugo actually attended Yale, and so in this book, something that I really loved were the descriptions. She does these incredibly detailed descriptions of the buildings and the layout and the light and what people are wearing, and I feel like the descriptions were incredible. They created such a wonderful atmospheric vibe. It was very aesthetically pleasing. Because she actually attended Yale, she could go into so much detail, and it was just so easy to visualize the campus and visualize where the characters were, and I really enjoyed that side of things. I feel like I haven't actually said how I feel about the book. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I was pleasantly surprised because, as I say, I wasn't enjoying it to begin with. This is like a fresh, raw reaction to it because, as I say, I have literally just finished the book. My first thoughts are that I really, really enjoyed it. I think probably maybe a 3.5 star, maybe 4-star rating. Crucially, I will probably read the sequel. I really enjoyed Alex's character. I thought she was quite refreshing. I've never kind of come across a character like her before in books. She's not your usual hero. She's definitely morally grey. She's definitely quite dark. She's definitely got a very, I don't know if disturbing is the right choice of words, but it's just a very difficult past. I really like her. I felt she was quite a believable character as well. I know that this is probably going to sound silly, but I've never seen a female character being described as sweaty without it involving some kind of like if a female character is described as being sweaty, it's usually because there was like a battle scene and it's kind of like a workout sweat, and so it's kind of sexy in a way because she's like been fighting, and so it's like sexy sweat. Does that make sense? Alex is often described as being sweaty, but it's not glamorous at all. It's very like she's sweaty and she stinks, and it's because she's nervous and she hasn't showered or something. And I like that. I felt like that was really refreshing. It was like just more authentic. I also really liked Alex's relationship with other characters, and I really liked seeing her interact with other characters. I ended up really enjoying all of the characters actually. I think they all worked really well. I'm excited. I can't really say it because otherwise I'm spoiling the book, but there's something that I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more of in Hellbent. I know that there's some sort of weird fixation on Darlington. A lot of people really like his character and he's like really beloved. I don't quite understand why, because I feel like he doesn't get that much screen time in this book. He's not very present, you know, because of the fact that he's disappeared somewhere. We sometimes get like chapters that are in his POV in the past. I just felt like it wasn't enough for me to really adore him. I like him and I really like his interactions with Alex, but other than that, like I don't feel like I know him as intimately as I know Alex, and so I don't understand the fixation on his character, but I'm sure he's going to be a really interesting character to continue. What else do I want to say about this book? What are the things that I enjoy? I just ended up really enjoying, obviously, the dark academia aesthetic. A lot of the magic system, I think it was quite interesting because there are a lot of different mythologies kind of involved. We get sections where kind of the Egyptian afterlife is evoked. There's also passages that refer to Greek mythology. I just thought the magic system was really interesting. I really liked all the different houses. I liked how all of the magic worked. I really enjoyed having a book that had ghosts in it. I don't know, I haven't really read that many and it was fun. It really reminded me of, what is that book called? V. Schwab's, what is it called? Ghost City? Ghost Tunnel? You know that series by V. Schwab? I binge read those books and this reminded me a lot of it, so I really enjoyed that. One thing that did not ruffle my feathers, that's not quite the correct term, but something that I felt was maybe a bit wrong was that Alex's character has been through a lot of horrifying things and she's witnessed a lot of awful things, and yet the trauma that would come from everything that she has been through doesn't really show through or surface until it becomes convenient for the plot. That is something that I noticed. I feel like she's not as traumatized as I would expect her to be. Good for her, I guess, but it just felt a little bit wrong. I have seen a lot of people say that they didn't like this book. There are obviously a lot of people who also loved it though. I feel like maybe it's a bit split. Some people were expecting more from Bardugo and said that it was kind of disappointing, and I understand that in some sense there is this big build up throughout the book, and Bardugo does favor a lot of detailed descriptions over a kind of steady pace to the plot. So I can understand why maybe it wasn't to everyone's expectations, and I think that what it comes down to is that I didn't really have any expectations for this book. I kind of expected to not enjoy it because, as I say, I had already read Bardugo. I personally hadn't enjoyed her previous work, but I think maybe Bardugo's fans who really adore her and love what she's done in the past came to this book and found it slightly disappointing, and I think that's maybe what has divided people. I could be wrong. Not everything is perfect. I think some of the horrible things that happen in the violence is kind of gratuitous. Is that how you say that? I've seen it written down and I've never said it out loud. Gratuitous? Gratuitous. 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 Gratuitous? I would recommend this book, if you like dark... Let me try that again. I would recommend this book if A, you like dark academia, and B, you like a sort of whodunit, because that's how this book kind of unravels, where, yeah, it's a whodunit. You're following this investigation that is led by Alex, and so I really enjoyed that element. I liked that it was kind of like an investigation and she had to rope in these other characters to help her, and she was finding out a few of these clues. I think that some of the clues were kind of handed to her, maybe a little bit too easy, but it didn't bother me that much. I also understand that there is a slow build up and that there is a kind of slower pace to the book, but I still felt that it was full of action. There was always something, not big, but there was something happening in every chapter, and I don't know, I thought it was plenty actionable, plentiful in action, bountiful. The one thing that bothered me as well at the end, and I can understand why it was maybe disappointing to others, is that the ending was a little too easy to solve. To conclude, I think that you should read this book if you enjoy dark academia, if you are not afraid of quite a bit of gore, if you enjoy books that involve ghosts, if you enjoy a good mystery, a good like whodunit, secret societies, anything else? Oh, where are you going? Okay. Don't look at my bins. Blimmin' heck. Yeah, to conclude, I enjoyed it. I would recommend. Just be warned that there are a lot of trigger warnings that you need to look at, that it might be a little bit slower paced. If you're a previous fan of Leigh Bardugo, you might be slightly disappointed. Basically, was it worth the hype? I think so. I'm not sure. Oh, does it deserve as much hype as it's gotten? Maybe not. Oh, I don't know. I think I personally enjoyed it. Definitely. I'm definitely going to read the sequel. Do I think it deserves the hype? Oh, bloody hell. How the turntables. Maybe. You'll have to find out for yourselves. There you go. Okay, so there you go. That is the end to this video. I filmed this over a couple of weeks and it is time for me to wrap it up. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope that this will have helped you out a little bit. That maybe I could do a part 2. Maybe I should continue or make this a series or something. I don't know. Let me know. But if you enjoyed it, don't hesitate to leave a little like. It is very much appreciated. Thank you so much. And also don't hesitate to comment. Tell me what you guys have been reading. Tell me what books you're interested in reading, but you're scared because of the hype. Chat to me. Let's have a good book chat in the comments. Don't hesitate. I will see you very soon in one of my next videos. I don't know when that will be, and I don't know what it's going to be, but there you go. Bye-bye.